Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second of the Sponge Chats. For those of you that are new to the video series, this series is basically focused on me interviewing teacher trainers, academic managers, material developers from around the world, finding out how they got into their positions and the advice that they have for teachers that would like to make similar moves. If you'd like to check out more, feel free to go to the blog. I'll leave a link below in the description. And please, if you like this video, give us a like and think about subscribing. It'd be great to have more of you within the community. For the second of Sponge Chats, I have a very, very special guest. I had the pleasure and the privilege to sit down with Roland earlier this week. We spoke about teacher training. We spoke about his route and how he got to where he is with regard to training and presenting. Some pieces of advice that he has for teachers, some perhaps mistakes that trainers make, and we actually got to do a surprise unboxing of his latest book. So a big surprise for everyone there. Have a listen, guys, have a watch, let us know what you think. And I look forward to seeing you for future Sponge Chats. Hi, Chris. It's lovely to see you again.
Hello, Mister. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you very much for being here this afternoon. Spain, it's a bit weird with times, right?
It is.
This is the second of the Sponge Chats that we're doing, and no, I'd just like to thank you, like I said, for being here, taking the time to be with us here this morning. Now, I suppose perhaps we can go over the objectives of Sponge Chats first. Why are we doing these? The idea of doing these Sponge Chats, I suppose, is I get these emails from teachers, and they're asking me, how do you move into teacher training? Or why did you move into teacher training? And, to some degree, our industry is kind of closed. Like you become a teacher and then it's either, management or you stay a teacher for a long time. And it seems like very few teachers move into teacher training. But one thing I've realized with working with many trainers is that the route for becoming a trainer or becoming any sort of manager really is very different for every person. And so I'd like to get different perspectives on how you got there, some advice and things like that. And yeah, this is the whole idea of Sponge Chats. I don't know, what are your thoughts?
You're absolutely right. I mean, the roots are various, but they're not always open, and they're not always open immediately. And there is a kind of, you can feel sometimes people, they'd like to do stuff, but they're just not getting the opportunities. I think it was a colleague and friend, Kerry Jones, the teacher trainer, materials writer, author. She said once in ELT, a lot of the time it's, you have to wait for people to open doors for you.
Right.
And sometimes those doors don't stay open for very long, but there are little opportunities. So I mean, people, you can be wanting to do something and just not get that opportunity, or conversely, I mean, you've probably had this as well. You see people would like to be doing what you're doing, but just haven't quite had that opportunity. There hasn't quite been that opening, and it, sometimes it's, half chance, half sort of. I mean, if you want to do something, you find a way, yeah.
Right.
But the routes are, like you say, they're somewhat arbitrary.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to perhaps get into maybe some of the things that we as maybe managers and schools can do a bit later. But I'd love to. I mean, we presented together in Almeria a long time ago. I've watched many of your talks, as I imagine many teachers have. In fact, I was watching this week. I was watching It was one that you did for DipTESOL Spain about 2 years ago. It was a webinar on teen classes, I think it was. Yeah, you've definitely got loads of ideas already out there. But I'd like to know where you came from in terms of one, how did you move into teaching, and then why the shift into teacher training and how that happened?
So I started teaching in Nottingham. I was working in a call centre, which is maybe a more standard route than many people, would imagine. But and I figured I needed to get out of that. I was about 26, so I did the CELTA, did some summer school work in Nottingham, moved to Seville, and started working in the academy sector and also in a semi-private school that did primary and secondary. So I got to sort of teach the classes of big classes of 30, 25, 30, and the small classes at the same day. So for the first sort of 5 years, I went quite hard at it, did some very long days in terms of contact hours. I was teaching in the morning, teaching in the afternoon. After that, moved to Syria, to Damascus, took up a position with the British Council there. Did 2.5 years there, returned to Barcelona, to Spain, but to Barcelona. Did 4 years with the British Council there. Moved down to Cadiz, back to Andalusia. Yeah.
You've just got all over the place.
I did indeed. Did a year there and then moved back to Seville and took up another job with the academy that I'd worked for the first time, Ellie, and that's where I am still. So. Sort of like a bit of a Mediterranean loop, really. Yeah,
you've come all the way back around, really. Wow, so been all over the place. And I imagine most of that was teaching, I suppose, up until what point?
Yeah, I mean, it's sometimes it's funny the perception people have sometimes. I remember a student asked me, what do you do as well as teaching? Once it's like, no, this is it. This is what I do. But yeah, I didn't get into teacher training until not late but I mean, I think I had 6 years of teaching under my belt before I even did a session for colleagues.
Right.
So it was, reasonable or respectable amount of time, I hope.
Yeah. And when you did eventually decide, okay, I want to try this, or I wanted to give a session, what was the sort of the catalyst for this?
I suppose I got to the point where I spent more time telling my colleagues about activities that I'd done than anything else. I'm gonna have to outsource this to something else because I might be starting to get boring. So yeah, and it also, I mean, I'd been in Damascus for a year. Teaching was going fine. It was actually, I was teaching a lot of adult classes and some young learners. It was in many ways a lot lighter than the academy classes to kids and teens and the secondary school teaching that I've been doing in Seville. So I was enjoying myself. I was having a lot of fun, but I was also starting to, break a few rules in terms of, in terms of traditional teaching and experiment in the classroom. And it was getting, it was expanding. And I thought, this has got to go somewhere. The energies were kind of sort of starting to turn round and round on themselves. So I got the chance to do a session for colleagues, an input in-house session, which in many ways I think can be often sort of your colleagues can be your hardest audience sometimes.
Yeah, I agree.
But it went very well. I shared some ideas. I remember somebody saying, did you make all those up? Because I haven't seen any of those. Well, sort of, as far as I know. I mean,
yeah.
And then did another one, and then I got a crack at the next year. There was a senior teacher trainer there called Bruce Javes, who gave me the opportunity to go up to Aleppo and do a month's intensive teacher training. And that really was teacher training. I mean, maybe there's a difference between presenting and teacher training. I think it becomes teacher training when you have an element of responsibility and accountability. Yeah. So the moment you take responsibility for those people you're training, and you're accountable for any kind of comments, reports, evaluations you make on them, then I think that's probably where we can say there's a difference between presenting and teacher training, and maybe also taking it one step further, where an institution is happy for you to be their representative to maintain a standard.
Right.
So if you're deciding if a professional qualification is awarded, so that's probably, so we've got sort of 3 versions of teacher trainer. But I got to go up to the north of Syria, to Aleppo, and work with 20 teachers for a month, giving an input session each morning, each afternoon. And then in the mornings, every day I was observing 2 teachers. I go with ministry inspectors. We go in, we sit at the back of the class and watch. And then we go to the headmaster's office, have some coffee, talk about the teacher a little bit and the progress in the school. Then we get in the van, go to another school. All the kids would be lined up in the playground, sometimes with balloons or stuff like that. It was, and I was, I was pretty green. I was in my 7th year of teaching, but it was my first real teacher training thing. Thankfully, Bruce, he talked me through all of the input sessions that he'd been giving.
Right.
So, and we spent, he sort of Obi-Wan'd me up before I left Damascus. So I knew my route, but it was, wow, yeah. And then from then on, I did a few sessions in Lebanon. And then when I came back, I just started doing every conference I could with the British Council in Barcelona. So, and because the council supports you a little bit, they sent me off to Portugal to work with API. They sent me off to IATEFL to attend and speak there. And then it sort of snowballed from there.
Yeah. Wow. It seems that a common theme throughout is being given the opportunity to do something and being provided that support. So, I mean, reflecting on my own, my own experience moving into training, I was lucky enough to be in a school that didn't have sort of a teacher training program at that time. And I just finished my Delta. And I was like, okay, this is something that I want to do. I've seen people do this. I've been on the other end of the teacher. I've been the receiver of teacher training, and I thought, this is amazing. You can really, really help teachers progress, and this obviously has a brilliant result for learners in the end. And so I was given the opportunity to move into that position. But as you said, that I was supported throughout that whole part there, and without that support, it would have been even more difficult than what it was. Because in my first year, I made so many mistakes. Just the things, learning. Also, I suppose one of the biggest things for me was the personal side of teacher training. There's something about the technical side, but there's also the sort of the humanistic and looking at the feelings of teachers and reactions, engaging that. And that for me was quite difficult. I'm not sure if there was anything that you found difficult in terms of the teacher training aspect.
Well, we all work from a limited base of empirical knowledge. Yeah. So the database that you've got, when somebody asks you a problem or an issue, the database builds up, so you can draw on it. You might have forgotten, but there might be stuff way back. When you're starting out, it might be the first time anybody's ever asked you that question.
Yeah.
Your answer might be just as good, but your self-confidence in the resources as you encounter the same things, year after year, then it gets easier and easier, I think. I mean, I remember in DipTESOL Spain, the first DipTESOL Spain I went to, it was in Lleida or Lerida. Paul Seligson had been over to Damascus when I was there. He was the first teacher trainer that I sort of encountered coming and doing a course. He came and did 2 or 3 days for us in Damascus with a close group of teachers. And he rocked up at DipTESOL Spain in Lleida. This was a few years later, and he said, "I said, what are you doing your session on?" I think I was manning the BC stand at the time. But he said, well, I'm just going to go in there and do some reactive, a bit of reactive workshopping. Just let people ask questions and see what it throws up. I thought, and he was going to do that to a full room,
Wow.
of over 100 people, 100, 200 people. I don't know how many were in there. At the time, I thought, my God, how could you just go in there without a safety net? But then his safety net is
his experience
already there, isn't it? Yeah. So it's like, so somebody asks him a question, then he either answers the question directly, or I've never been inside Paul's actual brain, but or he just refers it to the nearest example or instance or instances that he's got. But I think so. That's what you're lacking when you start out. It's just that sense of safety net. What if the question they ask me falls through the gaps in my own experience?
Yeah, I completely agree. I suppose it's very similar. I think it was Richards who said that teaching is basically, you become a better teacher by going through thousands of experiences of that. And I suppose teacher training is very similar, right? You get put in these situations, and especially things with like observations, understanding how to approach it, and you have maybe one observation where it's kind of negative, and you build up a sort of a repertoire of skills to deal with these. And so, yeah, I definitely agree with that. I suppose at the moment, what because if I'm not mistaken, you're actually currently part of the Trinity DipTESOL team for, is it Oxford TEFL in Barcelona?
It is,
yeah.
It is.
And how did you move into that? I mean, because that's a big jump now. So you've gone from in-house sessions to presenting to sort of in-house teacher training, and now you're on, and as you said, the external, where there's quite a significant certification there. How was the progression to that? Were you invited to that? Did you apply for this?
That was other people opening doors. I did my stint in Barcelona for 4 years, talking here, there, and everywhere. And then my partner and I decided we're going to move back to Andalusia. And I looked around, thought, okay, where can I go now that might sort of fit this sort of teacher, presenter sort of identity that I'm going for. And there is a school in Cardiff called Active Language that train. They train sort of alongside or through or with Oxford TEFL in Barcelona.
Right.
So they run the Trinity certificate and Trinity diploma courses now. They were just doing the certificate. And that was Simon Perlman, Danny Jones, Daniel Barber, and gang who started that. So I moved there after Daniel had left, but they were running the course. They had Teresa Bestwick, and they had Kerry Jones, and there was, a hell of a team. So they were running the certificate courses in the summer. So I moved down there as a teacher, but at the end of my teaching with them for a year, they asked if I wanted to train on the certificate, which was kind of one of the reasons that I went down. So I did a couple of summers training with them on the cert, and then I moved to Seville, but then continued on the diploma. So that was Kerry and Nicola Meldrum from Oxford TEFL invited me to do that.
Yeah. What differences would you say? So from doing an internal training course to something as, it's very external, but it's quite extensive as well, as like the Trinity DipTESOL. What are some of the differences?
I think the certificate courses, you've got that reality TV show element, the daily drama, and the fact that you're kind of living these people's progress with them. Right. So any of those programs that take people, MasterChef, or ones where they're training people up to be Marines, stuff like that. You see them on daily. You see the instructors and the training's wrapped up in this sort of thing that's going along. They're both affecting each other. You know, the input is shifting around what the trainees need. The trainees are, you know, sort of developing in response to the input. And so it's this element of drama that I really enjoy. But it is a very intense, I think, quite a powerful thing. You know, when you've got people coming in the morning, you know, and then they go and have a bit of a cry because they've had a problem with an assignment. They're feeling the pressure. They've got a letter from home about something that's personal, and you're dealing with you're dealing with more than just you know, input on it. Like, yeah. So there's that. I think then the thing about a, you know, extended course that's online is that you're trying to maybe recreate some of that, maybe not the drama, but you're trying to make it feel like you know, there is a course and not just a series of electronic signals, you know, being sent. I remember about 2008, while I was still in Barcelona, after I'd done my Delta, I did my Delta face to face, the whole thing intensively. I don't know if you can still do it like that. It was before it went modular, but I loved it. It was, you know, it was like it felt like, for me, how I really still perceive, you know, diploma and Delta as and how I'd probably like them to be a little bit more, an advanced assault course for English teachers, you know, very, very practical in that. But I started an MA. They kind of overlapped at the same time. So I was doing an MA in DipTESOL with Manchester. And I remember the first tutor we had, we were using the Blackboard Moodle, a gentleman called Julian Edge. It was fantastic. And he created this sense of there being a group of us just by, there were hardly any webinars, hardly any lives. It was all asynchronous, but just in the way he responded to our posts, just by the way he read our assignments line by line, move by move. I mean, he created this feeling that there was something. And I think that's the secret maybe to really good online training.
No, it's interesting because my boss at the moment, the person I work with, Patrick, he's actually on your, you were working with him for a few weeks, I think maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. And he was like, yeah, Chris, he's really into it. He's really personal. So it's really interesting to see the reactions. Like I can remember, when I did my Delta, I did my Delta online, so it's a distance. But like you said, it was with Sally Hurst from the ITI team in Istanbul, and extremely personal. And they made everyone feel together, encouraging forum groups and things like that. So I found that to be, you know, a rewarding part of taking part in that in that online training.
Say hi to Patrick, by the way. He was great.
I will.
Kept my thread on differentiation going for various days. Him and me, we were just chatting backwards and forwards. So
that's excellent. No, he was really enjoying it. And you know, that's the kind of thing that we want with training. I suppose I've been in academies as a teacher where there hasn't been any training, and in fact, I think training was almost looked down on in the sense that it was kind of stigmatized. And it's really this positive reaction that we're looking for within, at least for me personally, within the industry, is making teachers aware that training not only benefits them, benefits learners, but can be fun. It can be engaging, and it can most certainly be rewarding. It's making the training, you know, one, personalized. For me, it needs to be personalized. If for an internal course, that is, for presenting, it's whatever you like, I suppose. But for internal training, it needs to be personalized, and it's something that they can connect with. I imagine you have a similar point of view.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it's. I mean, it's when you say stigmatized, you mean sort of stigmatized on the part of the teachers? It's like, oh God, we got to go to training.
Yeah, pretty much. Also, in terms of, for example, observation is another aspect which I think has been stigmatized. But I don't think that's the fault of the teachers. I think that's the fault of many institutions of how observation is run. It's more of an administrative tool rather than a development tool. I don't know. That's from my own personal experience. I think there's very much, there are so many sort of emotional factors that are involved in observation, and if you just sort of squash them and don't think about them, I think the reaction of the teachers is obviously going to be quite negative. And unfortunately, I think many places do run it, their teacher training in general, like that. I don't want to generalize, of course, here, but I do think some teachers feel like, one, it's all just to keep an eye on them in a sense, and then they feel, oh, we have to do this, we have to go for this session.
Yeah, you know, you're right. I mean, it's like, yeah, is it an extension of management? Is it teacher training separately? And that's why I think it's good for centres to have, you know, a separate trainer or training department if they can, right, rather than it being, you know, the same, you know, owner, manager, middle manager, or you know, the same person doing everything. Because you get that sort of, otherwise it becomes a hurdle to jump through. And the other thing is, I mean, a few years back, Hugh Deller sort of got me into Russia, as it were. You know, it was very kindly sort of passed on quite a large number of contacts very generously, and so I've been doing some training over there, and you run a session, or you know, or run a day, and you've got teachers that have been on a train for 14 hours to come to the session, and you know, they've been all night on a train sleeping, and maybe arrived at the station at 7, had a couple of hours sleep, and then they'll come to the train and say, oh, well, I'll get some more sleep when I get back to the hotel tonight. And that sometime, you know, here in Spain, in that context, you know, you have problems getting teachers to get on a train for 40 minutes to go to a session sometimes, or to even into their own, you know, they resent having to go to any session, even if it's in their own centre. Yeah. So there really is this drastic, you know, change. I think, like, you know, as you know, it changes from, you know, place to place where you go, the whole sort of attitude to training. But it's, I think we might have reached a point maybe in Spain where there's some sort of level of stagnation, or where people can't see how it's going to help them. Right. You know, it's like, you know, what will the consequence of this be? Where is it taking me? And that, whereas you know, I feel in with the people I've worked with in, you know, in Ukraine, in Russia, in Belarus, they very much still feel the value of it. You know, if they improve their teaching skills, if they improve their skill set, their repertoire, then they can, you know, they can charge more to their customers or to their students, and it tangibly makes a difference to their income and their life, and that. So I think it's, you know, we're working in slightly muddied waters here sometimes.
Yeah. No, and that's I suppose something we have to take into consideration when we're planning things and looking at development programs. Not always the easiest thing, but certainly a challenge that we need to face, and it's just the reality of it. I can't remember who said it. Maybe it was Sue Swift on her website. I'm not sure. There was a diagram that saying, you know, there are teachers that love development, and there are teachers that need to be encouraged for development, and there are the teachers that even if you stick a rocket up their behind, they won't move. And you know, I was like, yeah, I can see that now. And these are, you know, perhaps one of the challenges of being a trainer. It's, you know, being able to accept that, and then do as much as we can with the resources that we do have.
For sure.
If you had to choose, now you are the ideas man. So whenever someone comes to me and they're like, oh, I'm looking for ideas for my teams, or I'm having trouble with this, the first thing I do is I recommend you, for a number of reasons. You are the ideas man. You've got a number of books out, which hopefully we'll talk about in a sec. But if you had to choose your favorite aspect of teacher training, your favorite thing to talk about, or your favorite thing to look at with teachers, what would you say?
I think it still has to be classroom management and discipline with teams. I think I remember standing on, it was Amigo Street in Barcelona with Chris Brandwood, who was then the director of the British Council Barcelona. And he said, nobody's really done anything on discipline. And I was, I was just about to start my MA. I'd done about 4 or 5 talks in Spain since getting back from Syria. And I thought, well, there's something. And I happened to have a couple of quite tricky, very low level groups of teams. And it's an area I sort of started penning down observations and thoughts on, and it sort of permeates everything I do. So even when I'm showing an activity that's nothing to do with classroom management per se, I'll feed the classroom management dimension in. And I think the reason I like that is because it's not always the prettiest, and doing, really showing really funky activities for primary, you get your audience going, oh, isn't it cute, which is also nice. But it's the nods when I'm talking about classroom management. I'm talking about the grind and how to adjust an activity to accommodate the resistance of a group of teenagers who may only be 70% working with you. Yeah. It's the kind of nods and the sense of catharsis and relief that I can see coming off the audience that I think is possibly the most rewarding. It's, it sometimes feels like dirty work, but, it needs to be done, if you know what I mean. So, that.
Yeah,
because
fair enough.
It just seems, I did the first 5, 6, 7, 8 sessions I did on teaching teens, ideas for teens. I'd have people always, but how do you get that to work? But what if? And then I realized people don't always want activities. They want to know how to get those activities to work.
Yeah.
So, and for each of my early sessions, I basically could have done another session. All the activities that I showed you yesterday, now this is how you get them to work. So yeah, probably that.
I suppose it's relevant for everyone as well. I don't know, for example, at the moment, with Cambridge University Press, we're doing a lot of sessions online, and we have teachers, and we're looking at, teachers, their academies or their schools. The institution gets to choose the session. But even the session may be on, for example, teaching a diverse classroom. But there's always the question that comes up with, how do we deal with classroom management with this group? There's always a question. And so that's really relevant. And like you said, teachers are always looking for that. And perhaps it's the one area, where perhaps many teachers get it wrong. I remember, as I said, watching that DipTESOL session that you gave at the start. The thing that was perhaps the most impactful thing that you said was, if we want, we could turn off this video. But our learners, they can't. They're kind of forced to stay there. And I think that's one thing that teachers maybe we miss sometimes. Maybe we miss that. So yeah, very interesting thoughts. So a teacher comes to you and they say, what are your top tips for moving into teacher training? Mm-hmm. What would you say?
Okay, so first of all, start to take notes. Start to take notes even now, and maybe a few little photographs of student work, even possibly students in an activity or recordings if you're recording the outcome. Because you only start really collecting this stuff together when you when you have a session to do. You might not get your first session, or you might want to talk about an area, that you're doing now, but in 3 years' time, 4 years' time, I have, almost no material to draw on from my first 6, 7 years, because I didn't take notes, many. I did some great stuff in those first 5 years with primary kids and plasticine. Once we made a kitchen, a kitchen, and we put all the food in the kitchen, and we put eyes on all the food, and we played this game where they were asking each other across the room, "Can I have your tomato?" And then the next person would ask something. It was fantastic. I couldn't recreate it even if I tried, not even making the things myself, I don't think. But I mean, so I think maybe taking notes is just so that you've got something to come back to. Then getting to see get as many reference points as you can. So I remember the first time I saw Carol Reed reading a story for kids. That was a sort of landmark moment for me, just seeing the way she read it in an animated way. Or the first time I saw Roy Norris talking about how he put one of his books together for teaching first certificate, and hearing the rationale and the thinking that was going in there, stuff like that. So I think getting reference points, seeing as many presenters as you can, or teacher trainers talking about training, and then you can kind of get your ceiling of, where things are at, where you'd like to be, and also you get a feel for the environment. What else is going on out there? I mean, in my first 5 years of teaching, I only read, after my initial sort of CELTA course, the only thing I read was a 1933 grammar by, it was either Jespers or Jesperson. I think it's Jespers, but it was, I mean, that was my input. And then in the 6th year, I got to British Council Barcelona and suddenly became aware of, all these people started telling me names, Noonan, Scrivener, Thornbury, and I started, reading, and then, met Paul and started meeting, other trainers, and that. So yeah, to get an idea of what's out there, in the early sessions that you do, I think the temptation is sometimes, because something's new to you, you think it's new to your audience. So, I remember seeing a couple of presenters once. They were presenting to a group of secondary school teachers, or primary, maybe a mixture, and they'd come from a training, an institution that does training. But they came and they showed their audience how to pin the tail on the donkey, which everybody in the room had seen. There were teachers that were, career teachers, 30 years in the. Yeah. I thought, guys, you're making. Even I could sense at the time. I wasn't even training then. I thought, this is a mistake, because you've imagined that because this is, maybe the first time you might have seen the idea, used it in class, So, and I think the mistake often, relatively new teachers make, they go and workshop a running dictation. I might even have done that myself. So, so it's just being aware what your audience might know, as well. What else? Probably not to compete with, as you're building yourself up, because you use energy, surplus energy, sort of to create energy. So you're putting time in your center. You put a little bit more time in, things go really well. With the extra confidence, you put a bit more time in and things go even better. Then you kind of, you maybe take a few of these activities and start showing your colleagues. And then you might, so from the input sessions, that might turn into, a local conference, a national conference, and maybe an international conference, but it all sort of acts as a spiral. But at each stage, you have to kind of build yourself up to make the next jump. And the danger is that as you're building yourself up, sometimes, you can become a bit inflated, a little bit arrogant. So I would say as you're building yourself up, try not to compete with your colleagues on an in-house basis. your fellow teachers are not they're not the competition really, and they probably won't be your final audience anyway. So it's very tempting to tell them all about those wonderful activities you're doing all the time. And I've done it myself, but maybe that's not what they want to hear. Maybe they just want a quiet 5 minutes in the teacher's room, to have a cup of coffee.
Yeah, fair enough. No, well, good, amazing points there. I think for me, definitely, like you said, taking notes and getting reference points. I suppose my biggest thing, one of the things that helped me the most, was actually going and seeing workshops and being part, but then looking at what the presenter or the trainer was doing, and having a good model, I suppose, and thinking, I like that. What are some of the characteristics that, I want to steal that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And even now when I go to conferences, I tell teachers, come here and be thieves, go steal things, go steal activities, go steal ideas. But also, I suppose I should say, like, if there are trainers or potential teachers looking to be in training, go steal ideas from the presenters as well. Look and sort of be critical of how they're presenting or how they're training as well.
So much so, yeah. Sometimes I'll go to a session just to see how they present. It might not be on anything that has anything to do with me, but I might be going to see, how the presenter presents. Other times, I like sitting. My favourite sessions are ones where I sit in, and I might be writing about something different, but the place they're coming from is firing ideas that might not correspond to what they're actually saying. And a lot of the time, people. I'm a fairly twitchy kind of guy anyway, so sitting next to me in any sort of performance is a bit of a trauma. But I've seen people sit next to me and look at what I'm writing, and kind of think, what the hell is he writing there? What's that got to do with? And then then I started. I have the basics of the Arabic alphabet, so. Then I started writing in that just because it seemed easier, because then I thought, okay, nobody's not going to know what I'm writing.
Yeah.
So a mixture of code and the first word, cryptic sort of pointers to myself. Another thing I liked it. I've been to Paul Selig and did a session that I saw 3 or 4 times. Wow. And every time we did the session, I went and saw it. To see how it had evolved, and also just you see something. It's like listening to a song again. He's a great presenter, and the ideas are great. But it was the last time I did it, and I actually just did a conceptual map of the talk, and every time there was a point, I kind of did an arrow back to where it was referencing.
Right.
So I was looking at overlap within the session. He told me I should show it. He wanted to see that, actually. I've still got it in a notebook somewhere. But you can learn something, from just watching how talks are constructed, and the different personas that people have and how they're using rhetoric. And sometimes I'll realize I've become a bit pawsy, a bit too much Heath Ledger's Joker. The pauses have become too long. And sometimes I realize I've become too manic, and that's why I look at myself occasionally, and especially with webinars, and think, you're starting to go into your head,
right.
Not so coherent version of you. So you have to come out. So you're constantly playing about with delivery.
No, very interesting. I think a number of my first few talks were very much also lacking a bit of confidence, I suppose, being in front of people, really, teachers, professionals, especially when there's someone that either your colleagues or someone that's that's a well-known trainer. For example, Chris Johnson, I think, was in my first session that I ever did, right. And I was like, that's Chris Johnson in my session. And the session went great. It was fine, right? But reflecting on that, I think reflection is the main thing here. It's to look at how you're doing things and to get better at that. But no, thank you very much for those points. and no doubt they're going to help at least one teacher, or hopefully more, around the world moving into training. That's our hope, right? That's our hope.
Point. Yeah, yeah.
Speaking about writing, though, you are a published author. In fact, I think you have 3 titles out, correct? You have Understanding Teens in 4. Yeah. Okay. So Understanding Teens in ELT, Fun, if I've got it down, Structuring Fun for Young Learners, and Understanding Teens Online.
Yes.
And then there's one more.
There's one more. Yeah.
I don't know it. You have to tell me.
Okay, so what we started with the teens book. The teens book was a main methodology book, about 300 pages, a little bit more, and then we did the same for primary. And my idea was to make it a slightly shorter book. It ended up being 350 pages.
Okay,
but with 200, a lot of photographs in it. I mean, for me, it's a thing of beauty. I love it. I love that book, but it brought that out that came out after a couple of years of quite hard work, just before it came out during the COVID lockdown. Right. So that's a book talking about primary classes, movement, crafts, everything that we haven't been able to do for the last 18 months, or 12 months, 13 months. So then we thought, okay, well, how is this going to adapt to online? So the one you're missing is it's Structuring Fun for Primary Learners Online.
Ah, right. Yeah, I didn't have that one written down.
It's a little book. It's 130 pages, and it's how taking the principles from the main book and kind of mapping them across, but also, my experiences during lockdown of teaching young kids online. Yeah. And
is that what you have there?
No, this is the teens one, actually. So, I mean, if anybody's watching this and wondering what's happened to my face, I am out of shape, but not that badly out of shape. I've just before we started, I had to run down Calle Feria here in Seville because the book, the latest one, has just arrived. And the man at the door needed me to pay some things on it because of Brexit. So it's like he was at the door. I mean, we were ready to start, weren't we? And it's like, well, here are your books. Like, there are your books. Now pay some fees. I didn't have any money in the house. He didn't have a little cash thing. So I just ended up running down the street, because otherwise he was going to take them to a warehouse in God knows where. God. And then I'd have to go and pick them up at some point. And during the week, that's just not an option. So shall we open it and have a look?
Yeah, let's go for it. I'm really excited.
I've never done a public unboxing online.
Public unboxing, a first. This is going to be my first one as well. Okay.
Cool. I've done a couple with my students, but whenever I get something delivered to the academy, then I'll open it with them. But normally they talk about the box, don't they? But we don't have to do that. So these are my author copies for the online book for teaching teenagers.
Oh wow!
And until you get your hands on the copy, do you know what I mean? It doesn't always feel, finalized and concluded. But once you've got the thing in your hands, then.
So is this the first time that you're actually getting this copy in your hands of this book?
Yeah, I've never seen this book before at all. So.
Wow.
So there we have it. It's Understanding Teenage Language Learners Online.
Excellent.
It's a little book. It's not, it's not crazy thick. But there's an awful lot of love in it. So this is all the classroom management stuff. And activities, and I've got even some of the photos there. It's a little bit of snap camera to do.
Very nice.
And projects. That's Anna Dimitrov in Galicia running some projects with.
I think I know my next book to read.
Yeah, rock and roll. Here we go. This is a project I did with him also in the middle of recordings talking about growing chilies. So
Phenomenal.
So yeah, that's quite nice. Talking about chilies, you remember the Almeria chilies?
Yes.
Well, these I've just started growing again, and some of these have some of the largest leaves.
That's huge.
So it's huge, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not variety, I know, but it's going to be interesting. So.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I remember. I think we didn't have it in this part of the video, but for those of you that don't know that are watching this, Chris is a fanatic with jam and chili and makes these amazing concoctions. So we're looking forward to the next time we do catch up eventually in person. It'd be great to try the next thing that you have.
Something from these plants anyway.
Yeah, with your book, that's from Pavilion, if I'm correct, right? Pavilion. Brilliant. I'll make sure to put links down the bottom for people that are interested in checking that out. No, that'd be really, I know what I'm. In fact, we've got your understanding teens and EOT in the academy. Patrick's always there looking through there. It's like, oh, Jim, you need to look at this idea. I'm like, yeah, it's good. So no, it's definitely we're feeling the love and we're loving the ideas. But Chris, I won't keep you for much longer. Just want to say thank you again for the time that you've been able to take out of your busy schedule and spend with me this morning. It's been insightful, amazing, and I can't wait to see you again presenting and also just catch up in person. And hopefully maybe another one of these sponge chats in the future on a different topic.
Yeah, brilliant. Sure.
So yeah, but thank you very much for your time. Yeah.
Oh, bless you. Thank you as well for taking time out of your schedule to do it.
Oh, brilliant. Excellent. Well, Chris, thanks for that. Have a great day and we'll see you later. Okay.
Bless you. Cheers, everybody. Okay.